So, it's been a bit since my last video, and that definitely isn't because I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom. Anyways, the Sonic community has one of the most creative fan bases out there, and a great way to see that is through the sheer amount of Sonic Fangames that exist, and many of them are finished and well polished too. There are a lot of really good Sonic Fangames out there, and a ton of them deserve the spotlight, but in this video, I'm going to go over one of my personal favorite Sonic Fangames, and why you should play it too. This is Sonic and the Fallen Star. Let's begin with some background information. Sonic and the Fallen Star was released on July 1st of 2022, and was made by Stardrum, with OSTs by Holly Taylor and Hi. I'll include the rest of the credits at the end of this video, as well as a download page in the description. The game features 9 full zones, 2 entirely original soundtracks, cutscenes in-game, and special stages. You can also choose to play as either Sonic or Tails. The game comes with a ton of polish, and it's the first anniversary of its release, so I figured now is a perfect time to make a video about it, in case you haven't heard about it before. Before I really dive into things with this game, I'd like to mention I will be featuring spoilers for the entire game. This includes stuff like zones, bosses, and story. So, if you don't want to get spoiled by anything in the video yet, I'll provide a quick TLDR of things. Basically, this game is really good, and it's absolutely worth your time. The gameplay, visuals, music, bosses, special stages, cutscenes, and everything else are incredible. And while I do have some critiques with certain parts of the game, as a whole, it is close to a masterpiece of a 2D Sonic game. Now that I've given a spoiler warning and a quick TLDR, let's jump in. But before you go and play the game, if you decide to do that, maybe consider liking this video if it helped you find the game, and consider subscribing if you want to find out more about Sonic Fangames, because I'll be covering more of them in the future. Beginning with the story. The game starts off with Sonic and Tails investigating what seems to be a star that has fallen out of the sky, and of course, Dr. Eggman is on the scene too. The pair get to the star, and just as they're about to grab it, Eggman takes it away from them. Not wanting to be taken away, the star breaks itself into 5 different pieces, and now it's a race to see who can get them all first, Sonic and Tails, or Dr. Eggman. The story is a pretty easy one to follow, and it's all explained through in-game cutscenes with amazing sprite work. As Sonic and Tails grab more star pieces, they happen to stumble upon Dr. Eggman's scheme, and how he plans to use the star pieces. Once all 5 star pieces come together, the full star will reform itself, and serve as an energy source for Eggman to use to power his mechs and destroy the planet. Seeing this plan, Sonic and Tails now realize they need to work quicker and make sure Dr. Eggman can't get a hold of all 5 star pieces. While this story isn't anything super new to the Sonic franchise, it's a tried and true formula that works really well for 2D Sonic games, and like I said before, it's easy to follow along with. Eventually, Sonic and Tails have 4 of the 5 star pieces, while Dr. Eggman has 1 piece. Eggman realizes that he can lure Sonic and Tails into a trap with the last remaining star piece, and he can steal the other 4 from them. With his trap set, Eggman awaits on his airship as Sonic and Tails board on in hopes of taking back the last star piece. However, just as he planned, Eggman is able to trap and steal the 4 pieces. As the star begins to charge up Eggman's final mech, Sonic fights back in an attempt to stop it, but is unsuccessful. Now, this is where the story ends, unless you have all 7 Chaos Emeralds. Sonic is able to defeat Eggman's first mech and take back the star pieces with the assistance of the Chaos Emeralds. But Eggman has significantly charged up his final mech, and it's now up to Nova Sonic to stop him. In the final fight against Dr. Eggman, Sonic is victorious, and he releases the star back to its sanctuary, and he returns to Earth to meet up with Tails. Another adventure complete. The final boss for this game is really cool, and Sonic is able to utilize his new form known as Nova Sonic, which is Sonic using the power of the star and the 7 Chaos Emeralds. The story isn't anything unique, but it serves as a way for Sonic and Tails to travel throughout the various zones of the game, which is what I'll get into now. Sonic and the Fallen Star consists of 9 different zones, all of which are brand new and each have 2 acts with a boss and mini-boss. You can see the inspiration used in some of these zones, but some are completely unique and are very fun because of it. The first zone is Sapphire Sights, which is a spin on many of the first zones in Sonic games, such as Green Hill and Emerald Hill Zone. Because this is the first zone of the game, it isn't very challenging in terms of difficulty, but it does introduce you to the style of levels featured in the game, which are slightly more vertical than normal 2D Sonic levels, and feel very similar to levels from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Each zone in the game has some new mechanics to learn, which provide the variety you want in a Sonic game. Sapphire Sights visually looks amazing. In fact, this entire game looks gorgeous, with a beautiful art style and sprite work. The looks for this zone consists of those nice greens you'd see in a first Sonic zone, but it also incorporates red and white platforms and architecture to break up the greens and blues. The background also shows off some stars in the sky, which are presumably where the fallen star came from, and some rainbows that just provide this zone with an amazing look. Sapphire Sights also features the first mini-boss and end-of-zone boss, which I'm just going to refer to as the Eggman boss for each zone. Particularly, the Eggman boss for Sapphire Sights is very well made and feels like a real boss fight rather than a hit the boss as many times as you can, as fast as you can kind of boss that the classic Sonic games are kind of known for. Check out my best classic Sonic boss video for some more info on those. For the first zone of the game, it really comes out swinging, and is a near perfect start to a 2D Sonic game. But now that Sonic and Tails are onto their adventure, it's time for the next zone, which is Tropical Tracks. Something that's both explained in the cutscenes through the story and visually is how each zone really leads into one another. Tropical Tracks really serves as a transition between Sapphire Sights and the upcoming Discount District zone, and that can be easily seen as it blends both stage aesthetics to create a combination of them. The greens and blues are still here from Sapphire Sights, but the zone consists mostly of these checkered racetracks, which are the outskirts of the upcoming city. The visuals here are just as good as Sapphire Sights, but the gameplay here is even better. You're able to build up some ridiculous speeds due to the speed boosters on the tracks, which allow you to really speed through this zone in a good way. If you fall off the tracks, you're placed on the beach below, where you climb your way back up using the plants and terrain. You can see the cars fly past you in the background of this zone, and when you're able to keep your speed up, you really feel like you're racing to get those star pieces. The mini-bosses for each zone aren't usually anything too crazy, so I probably won't mention them that much, but I will go over the Eggman boss fights because they're almost all unique and fun. The Eggman boss for Tropical Tracks is probably one of my favorites in the game, as it sees Sonic chasing a train with Eggman as the conductor. Sonic needs to dodge the crates that Eggman throws at him until one with a spring appears, which places him on top of the train to damage it. Once Sonic races through the Tropical Track Zone, he enters the aforementioned Discount District Zone. Discount District Zone is both your typical Sonic City level and also not. This zone has rails to grind on, springs that bounce you everywhere, and launchers that send you flying. Visually, the zone is a vast city with all kinds of styles and colors thrown into the mix. One of the most unique things about this zone is that it gives classic Sonic some rails to grind on, which is usually something only done in the 3D games. This is probably one of the most normal feeling zones in the game, and while it isn't entirely unique, it definitely doesn't bring down the experience at all. In the Eggman boss for the zone, Sonic has to destroy Eggman's mech, which for some reason is a police car, and he mostly just drives back and forth, allowing you to damage him freely. While Discount District Zone may not be the most unique zone in the game, Bubble Blossom Zone is certainly unique. Sonic and Tails fall through the sewers of Discount District Zone, and instead of ending up somewhere gross, end up in one of the prettiest zones in the game, Bubble Blossom Zone. Bubble Blossom feels like a park in Discount District Zone, and the environment reflects that with all the greens and nice looking plants everywhere. This zone feels like what Sapphire Sights would be like if it was surrounded by a city. There's also a little bit of water in this level, which can be frightening in a Sonic game, but it's pretty easy to avoid, and there really isn't much of it. The second act of the zone is where it really feels like a park, with pink trees and confetti everywhere. It's almost like there's a party or a festival going on in the park. Overall, the gameplay for this level isn't super difficult, but I think this level is much more focused on the visuals, and it sure excels in that area. For the Eggman boss of the zone, Eggman is in a giant whale mech and takes Sonic under the water as he tries to defeat it. Definitely one of the prettiest zones in the game, and following it up is tough, but Frozen Fountain certainly tries. The best way to describe Frozen Fountain Zone is like Press Garden Zone Act 2 from Sonic Mania mixed with a factory at nighttime. This zone definitely feels like an intermediary zone within the game, but unlike most of those kinds of zones, it actually has good moments. The first act takes place outside the factory, while the second act really sees Sonic go deep into it, and I think that's where most of the uniqueness of this zone lies. Act 2 of this zone can really feel like a maze, but in a good way, and one where you actually rarely get lost. The background for Act 2 also shows an important detail which becomes clear once you beat the zone, and that detail are the trucks that zoom by. The Eggman boss for this zone really feels like the first boss of Sonic Colors, so I can't give it any points there, but much like Discount District Zone, this one doesn't take away from the experience at all. Now that Sonic and Tails have cleared Frozen Fountain, they spot a massive greenhouse dome in the distance, and decide to hitch a ride on the trucks to get inside. Inside the dome, they find themselves in Gusty Greenhouse Zone. The idea for this zone is one that I've never seen done in a Sonic game before, and I think there are a lot of really cool ideas that can come out of it, but unfortunately, this zone really only capitalizes on a few of those. I think Gusty Greenhouse is really the only disappointing zone within the game, but realistically, it is still a fun time to play through, especially the Eggman boss. Anyways, this zone is mostly just a run through of platforms and feels almost like a factory level, when I think there could have been a lot more done with the greenhouse aspect and plants within the zone. As always, the visuals are really well done for Act 1, while Act 2 features a more dark and in-the-depths kind of look. I think the highlights for the visuals are definitely the backgrounds, which showcase rows and rows of plants within the greenhouse and really make you want to jump back there and run through it all. The enemies for this zone can be annoying at times, which is something I haven't mentioned for previous zones because they aren't usually problematic, but this zone in particular feels like it has harsh enemy placement, and some of the platforming suffers because of it. Once you do reach the end of Act 2 though, you aren't greeted by Dr. Eggman, and are instead greeted by a pink Metal Sonic. And just to be clear, this fight is awesome. Metal Sonic has a lot more health than the normal Eggman bosses do, so there are multiple phases to this fight, one where Metal Sonic even transforms the surroundings into the bad future of Stardust Speedway from Sonic CD. Once Metal Sonic is defeated, Sonic and Tails grab the star piece it was guarding and head towards the next zone, Carnival Crater. Easily the most outlandish looking and visually unique zone in Sonic and the Fallen Star has to be Carnival Crater. This zone is like if Asteroid Coaster from Sonic Colors and Lava Reef Zone from Sonic & Knuckles crashed together and then someone set up a carnival inside the wreckage. So yeah, this zone is crazy, but not only with its visuals, but gameplay too. There are roller coasters you can ride in, balloons to bounce on, and a whole lot of lava to avoid. Whoever's idea it was to set up a carnival inside of presumably a volcano is pretty crazy, though it was probably Eggman, seeing as he loves doing stuff like that. The gameplay in this zone definitely feels like a later zone in a Sonic game, as it's tough, but not challenging in a way that feels unfair, and in general, this zone is just really fun to run through and ride through and bounce through. The Eggman boss for this zone is also a really cool multi-phase fight, where Sonic first has to destroy the hands off of his mech, and then attack it while falling down a giant pit. Following up the craziest zone in the game is probably the calmest feeling zone in the game, which is Raspberry River. Right after Sonic and Tails barely escape from a volcano eruption, they find themselves in a nearby Raspberry River, which has some of the most calming music and aesthetics. Raspberry River really is the calm before the storm, in terms of gameplay, story, and visuals, and even though it's the second to last zone in the game, the ease of difficulty feels very pleasant to play through. This zone is much like Bubble Blossom, where the visuals take center stage, and are what enhances the experience. I haven't gotten into the music yet for this game, but this zone in particular has some outstanding music, and I've listened to its soundtrack a bunch. The only downside to this zone is that the Eggman boss is kind of annoying to fight. The mechanics are difficult to figure out at first, and damaging the boss can be a pain depending on where Eggman decides to go on the battlefield. But really, despite this, Raspberry River is a close contender for the best zone in the game. Now that Sonic and Tails are through the Raspberry River, they come upon a lake, where Dr. Eggman's airship rises from beneath the waters and Sonic and Tails must board, Thunder Turbine Zone. It wouldn't be a true final 2D Sonic zone if it wasn't aboard one of Dr. Eggman's many creations, and Thunder Turbine Zone is just that. This zone is both hard, but also allows you to go insanely fast with some speed boost mechanics throughout the zone. It's rare to die in Sonic and the Fallen Star, but the true challenge is making sure you can platform without getting sent back. In this zone, test to see if you've learned how to do that throughout the game. There are multiple instances where falling can set you back, but once you finish a section, you feel accomplishment. Visually, this zone starts off as one of the coolest in any Sonic game, as Sonic races onto the airship before it takes off, and only once he does get on board does it lift into the sky. This zone definitely earns the name Thunder Turbine, as a lot of the level is built out of turbines and utilizing the speed they provide you. Act 2 is where it also earns the thunder part, as the outdoor sections of the level feature a bunch of lightning and thunder. Sonic's main goal of Act 2 is to destroy what seems to be generators powering up the ship. Since Dr. Eggman doesn't have the fully formed star just yet, he has to power his airship by other means. Once Sonic reaches the final generator, he's greeted by Dr. Eggman's trap, which pins him down and takes the 4 star pieces that he holds. This reforms the entire star and begins to power up Eggman's true final boss mech, but before that, he first tries to take out Sonic without using it. In the gameplay here, I use Super Sonic to take down this boss, since you need him to get to the true final boss of the game, but without Super Sonic, this is a tough boss fight. The attacks from the mech aren't easy to avoid, and when the mech is vulnerable, it's only for one hit. I recommend trying this without the use of Super Sonic for your first time, just to get the sense of accomplishment from defeating the boss. But once you do defeat the boss, you are either met with the true final boss, or are sent back to collect the remaining Chaos Emeralds that you need. I haven't said anything about the special stages yet, so before I move on to the true final boss, I'll talk about those. The special stages in this game are similar to those from Sonic 3D Blast, or from the minigame in The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. If you've played either of those, you can get an idea of what I'm talking about, but of course, you can also see the gameplay of them too. They feature a behind Sonic camera and require you to complete laps of the course without running out of time or dying in order to get the Chaos Emerald. The special stages feature a variety of obstacles, and you can access them by finding hidden giant rings in each zone, like in Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Mania. They can be difficult, and sometimes require multiple attempts, but they give out a pretty good reward, which of course is Super Sonic, which has a pretty cool design in this game. Now with the special stages out of the way, we can move on to the true final boss. Sonic and Tails are briefly captured, but Sonic uses the Chaos Emeralds as well as the fully reformed star to become Nova Sonic, like I mentioned earlier in the story section. Nova Sonic has a super cool design, being somewhat of a cross between Hypersonic and the Fallen Star. Nova Sonic is placed in Stardom Sanctuary Zone, where he fights Dr. Eggman's final mech that has been powered up by the reformed star, however, not fully. You can see the health bar of the boss on the mech in the form of a star, and as you can see when the fight begins, it isn't fully filled up, which indicates that the mech isn't entirely charged just yet. This proves to be very nice during the fight, because getting hit at all is pretty much a death sentence. There are rings to collect during the fight, but those are mostly used to make sure you don't run out of time, as your ring counter will tick down from 50, and once you hit 0, you die. This boss has a variety of attacks. Sometimes it will teleport to you and let out an energy blast, sometimes it will throw spikes, and other times it will just try to get you with a laser beam. This boss is really cool and definitely feels like other 2D Sonic final bosses, which is a good thing. And as you land that final blow on the boss, the game is complete. But wait, don't be sad. You just played one of the best Sonic Fangames, and you can also replay the game as Tails too. Now that I've covered the zones, I'll go over some of the other things that I really like about this game. I won't ramble for too long, the script is already at 11 pages, so I'll try not to make it much longer. First up is the soundtrack for this game, and wow is it really good. I mentioned it before, but I've listened to this soundtrack a bunch, and I've used it all throughout this video. There are actually two soundtracks, but specifically the one I'm referring to is the soundtrack made by Holly Taylor. I'll leave a link to the full OST in the description. Some of my personal favorites are Rose Colored Rhythm, Time Rift Shift, and Superstar Space Warrior, but really this entire soundtrack is amazing. Next are the in-game cutscenes. These are super well animated and provide a really nice transition between each zone and also give context for the story. The sprite work in particular is really nice, especially on the non-traditional sprites, which usually feature up-close looks at Sonic and Tails. Finally, there's the extra playable character, which is Tails. I haven't gone through the entire game with him yet, but including a second character takes time and really shows the passion the dev team had for this game. And by the way, this game oozes passion, and especially polish. I've only ever encountered one bug in my multiple playthroughs, and it wasn't even a gameplay bug either, it was just a little menu glitch. Now, obviously this game isn't entirely perfect, I'm sure there are some bugs here and there, but overall the polish is extremely high. There's also a gallery within the game that features some artwork and other stuff that you can check out either before or after you beat the game. Now I think that's everything I really wanted to talk about with this fan game. It really is something else, and feels just as polished and well made as an official 2D Sonic game. Of course I've got links to everything in the description, such as a download link for the game, and the OST playlist, and a Twitter for the Sonic and the Fallen Star dev team. This game is absolutely worth your time, and can take about 2 hours to beat on your first playthrough, so set aside an afternoon sometime and have some fun with it. Thanks for watching this video and review on Sonic and the Fallen Star. I hope to make a ton of videos on not only Sonic Fangames, but other official Sonic games as well. And not only reviews either, but a bunch of different Sonic related topics. So if you enjoyed this video and any of that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing or leave a like on this video if you enjoyed my review of Sonic and the Fallen Star. I hope to have more frequent videos, but I don't have a schedule set in stone for making videos, so we'll see how that goes. But regardless, I like making these videos, and I plan on making more in the future. Now, as I let the credits roll for Sonic and the Fallen Star, thanks once again, and maybe I'll see you next time.